What's up, you guys? So today we're going to talk about a fine adjustment tool that I think you should be using in Lightroom, especially when you're talking about your portraits or your self-portraits, whatever. For this one, I'm going to show you a self-portrait and how I used it. But yeah, so I'm going to make my little commenter window. I'm going to show you Lightroom and we'll get into it. Okay, so now I'm in my little commenter window and we have Lightroom pulled up. So you can actually see this is just the self-portrait. This is the final. If yours look better, awesome. If they don't, here's a tool for you. So I don't want to say that this is the best portrait or self-portrait ever, but it's just one that I did. And this is the final image, and you can see most of these are touched just a little bit, so that gives you the first point that you need to nail it in camera. But most of these I did very small adjustments. You can see that I really didn't do a whole lot with most of these sliders or whatever. Sharpening, I did some. Obviously exposure and getting the right contrast and stuff like that is always key. For this one, there's not really any transforming or anything like that because of how cropped in it was. I shot this on an 85 f1.8, so that gives you an idea. When I do portraits, I really like to do two things: either a really, really wide one where you can see something like an entire background and you have that person is solidified in the photo as your subject, or the opposite. I like to do something that's very cropped in and very close, kind of like this. But let's talk about two tools that you could use to do really fine adjustments, and this is one of them. The first one is the circle tool, and I don't have it on this one, but you could do the same thing that I'm going to do with the wand tool with this. So if you wanted to and adjust some of these contrasted areas like my hair or maybe in my beard or whatever, you could do the same thing. But what I would do is like actually make a selection, a very big selection, and of course it wants to make me a proof. Create a proof copy. Okay, so you could do something where you're actually making a big circle, and if you do this, it's a little less precise, which could be good, because if you have something that's like up here, this is out of focus, down here, not super in focus, right here is focus. So if we hit that O key and we invert the actual mask here, you can see that it's going to hit all of these areas, which could be good. But for an even better example, this is what I would do. I want to show you the wand tool. So I have two tools here already posted, or two little points already posted from the wand tool. So that is increasing your contrast and doing fine adjustments with like eyes and teeth when you're talking about doing adjustments in your portraits, especially with Lightroom. You can do this in a lot of different ways, but this is how I did it. So if we click this is what I was saying with the circle tool. So instead of doing that circle tool, what I did was try to mask it with the wand tool, and then I painted around the areas that I wanted, so I didn't have too much on the sides or too much out here in the background or whatever. But from here you can see I did way more adjustments. So my highlights are different, my shadows are different, whites and stuff like that. This will always give you that contrasted look, so you can get a really good contrast. And it's obviously black and white, so when you have black and whites, you're going to get even more contrast, which is really good. So that's what I did with that wand tool. The other one is teeth, and you can see that I basically have painted, let's see, go down here, painted in the areas of my teeth that I wanted to whiten up some, because this is a black and white, so that's going to be very pronounced when you're doing that. If we zoom back out, you can see here with this one, I did the exposure a little bit and the whites a little bit, with the blacks a little bit. It's all about making it realistic. So if you crank the exposure, it's going to look terrible if you don't adjust it for everything else. So obviously your teeth aren't completely white, and your gums are going to be like super like glowy too, right? So your teeth can be white, but you need to add in some like contrast with it. So that's where the blacks and the shadows, if you wanted to do something like that, could be could help you out. The other thing that I didn't do already with this photo is adjust the eye. So this is something, if you're doing a portrait, obviously your eye, whichever eye is there first or is closest to the camera, is the one that you want to enhance. Obviously in this photo I only have the one eye in the photo, but you could do the same thing. So for this one I'm going to do the circle tool. We're going to invert it again and set it on my iris. If you wanted to do the wand tool, you could obviously do that as well. This is just like a fast way to do it, so I wouldn't recommend doing this necessarily this way if you're trying to be really, really precise. What you could do is also do this on the iris and then paint the whites of your eyes as well differently. But I'll turn that off for a second. And when you do this, you can actually increase the exposure just a little bit. Be very precise with it, because if you do it wrong, it's going to look terrible. But what I like to do is add the exposure and then contrast like together, and then you can adjust highlight. So obviously you see the softbox in my eye where you have that light flash or the light in your eye or whatever. So if you wanted to, you could dumb that down just a little bit by for this image exactly, bringing down those whites. But being able to do this will actually give you a better representation of your eye when you want it in a photo. So doing these three things, really just being able to set up your photo, get it right in camera first, and then also when you're done, getting into that editing and doing fine adjustments. You don't want to do clarity over the entire photo, because what you're basically doing is clarifying things that you don't want to be clarified or clarityed, whatever. You don't want to do that into an entire image, especially when you're talking about a portrait. You want subtle adjustments. So for this image, what I did was just do the contrast and color, whites, brights, and stuff like that, whites, lights, darks, and shadows for the entire image. And then what I did was enhance it by going into those tools on the far right of the window there with the circle and the wand tool. By doing this, I created masks over just the areas that I wanted to adjust. So in this one, it would have been my portrait, and it would have been my face. So I didn't want to add contrast to a super white shirt or whatever, or add exposure to a white shirt. I only wanted to add it to like the areas where it needed it. So I didn't want to have my beard being completely black. So if we did the image little finder thing where you can actually see how your darks are and your whites are in your exposure window, if those are too white, it'll be blue or red or whatever, and the opposite will be, your blacks will be blue or red, and you'll see that those are completely blown out, or they'll be crushed, and you wouldn't want that in your photo. So by doing these little fine adjustments, it'll help you out so much, because you're able to just affect those certain areas. This is really good. I'm not a professional editor or anything. I'm more of a photographer that likes to edit as well, so don't hold me to all of these things, but I think some of these tools, when you go in to do like your portraits or whatever, will definitely help you out, because by doing it in small amounts and doing it sparingly and doing it with care versus trying to do an entire image really quickly, it's going to help you out and it's going to look like a better photo. Anyway, I want to say thank you so much for checking all of this out. If you liked any of this content, please leave me a like below. I super appreciate it. This is a new channel, so it helps out a ton. Also, if you want to hit that little red subscribe, you can do that as well. I have a ton of content. This is a new channel, like I said, so the sky's the limit as far as what I can produce for you guys. Let me know if there's anything that you're into that you want to see more of. Maybe I have a tip or a trick or something that I've done in the past. Maybe something that could help you out. Anyway, I'm going to hit you with a, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, I guess. See you in the next one. That should be that's good. I'll see you.